Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we're going to try to do a shorter one. We don't know how long this is really going to go. For all we know, I just lied, and it's going to be 5 hours. But we are going to be talking about Devil May Cry. This is a really kick-ass video game franchise that has turned into a whole bunch of video game collaborations within different games like Beautiful Joe, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. It's also been turned into an anime, and it's pretty friggin' sweet. You're a demon hunter who also is a demon. You go around, kill stuff. They have a cool, smooth ranking system, and you could get flashy and fun and creative, or you could just be boring and shoot everything up. The choice is yours. It's Capcom, so pretty cool characters, and I think that's about it. If you don't know what we do, we are a podcast that talks about very weird things in pop culture that extends to everything: comic books, movies, video games, music, all sorts of stuff. If you don't believe us, you could go back in the archives and find it and have a great time, I guess. I'm going to stop talking in a minute, but that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the true strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show.
Devil May Cry. So Devil May Cry is the story of Dante, who you had mentioned is part demon, and he's a demon hunter. He's actually half demon, half human, and his father Mundus was like the king of demons. Sparta. Sparta is his father. Mundus is the bad guy. Sparta was the king of demons and was Dante's father, and also the father of Virgil, who's Dante's brother, who we're introduced to in Devil May Cry 1, but he's like dressed in this armor and you don't know it's him at first. He takes more of a prominent role in Devil May Cry 3, which is a prequel. And it shows like Dante as he's first starting up his business, which is it's called what's his freaking shop called?
I think the shop is called Devil May Cry.
I think it is called Devil May Cry. Obviously Dante's part demon, so he's like, very durable, and he often takes like attacks that would kill a normal human being and just like walks it off. Like he gets impaled by a sword several times and various other really egregious wounds. But
just nothing happens to this guy.
Yeah, well, part of his power is that he's like, he's very durable. He's got basically all the powers of demons, and he could do this thing called Devil Trigger, where he basically turns into his true demon form or whatever, and gives you extra strength and agility and makes you temporarily immortal while you're fighting. So the first game, let me get into the history of it a little bit. Devil May Cry, the original, developed by Capcom, it was actually originally conceived as Resident Evil 4. This was the template for Resident Evil 4.
Which I thought was really cool. That was probably the most interesting thing that I found about this, was that it just wasn't even supposed to be its own thing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what that meant. Like, does that mean that does that mean that you were going to that you were going to be that the bad guy was going to be something similar to Dante, or were you going to play as a cop similar to Dante, where where the officer or that you're playing as is also infected with this virus that turns them into something,
Yeah, I'm
and then
not.
you get to play as that other thing for a little while. That probably
Yeah.
that sounds like the direction they thought of, and that would
Well,
have
they
been
kind of
really
did go.
interesting.
They kind of did go with that with Devil May Cry 4 because Devil May Cry 4 had the mercenaries mode where you could play as Wesker, who's got T virus powers basically.
Yeah.
Um, but I would imagine that originally maybe it wasn't as crazy with all the like moves you could do and being like near immortal. Maybe they just added that as Dante. Um, I think because the game started to become so different from the traditional Resident Evil games, that's when they decided, hey, maybe we should just make this its own thing. Uh, which is probably a good thing because I imagine if it came out like the way it is and called a Resident Evil game, it probably would have gotten a lot of backlash and probably would not have done as well.
I don't think that there would have been a middle ground on it. I think it would have
No,
been one of those games where people either love this game or people hate this game.
yeah, yeah, and it would have been one of those things where like the gameplay is great, but people would have been like, "This is not Resident Evil. Why the fuck are they doing this?" You know,
Yeah.
because it was even a big change when they did actually the real Resident Evil 4. Um, with the over the shoulder view instead of having the fixed camera angles, which every other Resident Evil up to that point had had. So, it would have been definitely, not only that, that was a big impact, even though the gameplay was still very clearly Resident Evil survival horror, limited ammo. And they made it a little bit more action orientated than the previous games just because of the over the shoulder view
But I thought
Leon
that
is
was
kind
a
of,
really nice change, the over
yeah,
the shoulder view.
no, I agree. It definitely it makes it a lot more dynamic, I think. And being able to aim your gun and like shoot in the head or shoot in the knee to kind of like make someone stumble and then do like the kick move. It was a really it was a good change in pace for Resident Evil.
Yeah, I thought it was
Um
great for its series. Also, Resident Evil 4 is my favorite in the series, and I know a lot of people love that game. Just they went in a slightly different direction and than what we were used to, and they nailed it for that game.
yeah, 2 is
After
always
that,
my favorite.
after 4, some are like they're kind of hit and miss on some of them, but I think 4 was where they really got it right.
Yeah. 5 5 was still a good game. I liked 5, but it got a little ridiculous with like, Chris punching boulders and shit and like the last boss fight was so campy and like over the top.
Yeah.
It kind of jumped the shark a little bit 5. And then I did not like 6 at all. I played it for about 20 minutes and I'm like this is just not good.
Yeah,
Um
I feel the same way. Like 5 didn't really feel like Resident Evil, but I was like, all right, at least this is a good game.
yeah. I have
Whereas,
not played 7 or 8. I've heard good things about both. Because it was kind of like more of a return to the original Resident Evil, like survival horror style. Um, Especially 7. Uh, I've seen like plenty of stuff about it, but I haven't played it. But it's
it's
Resident Evil
interesting.
2, the Resident Evil 2 remake was pretty amazing. So they're definitely going in a good direction with that. As for Devil May Cry, now we're turning it into a Resident Evil podcast. Back to Devil May Cry. It's a good thing they made it its own franchise because this is so different than what the gameplay of Resident Evil is. With it's a hack and slash. It's like heavy emphasis on combos and trying to get your combo meter up and up and up. Um, and So it just wouldn't have worked for a Resident Evil game. It's not. There are obviously horror elements in Devil May Cry, but it's more of an action game. Like, because Dante is not this, normal person that's getting his ass kicked and he has to run away because demons are chasing him. Like, he is a superhero, basically.
Yeah, he's a
He's almost
total
like
badass.
Blade or Spawn, where he's just like completely fucking killing everything that he sees. And he
Right.
fights giant demons that are 10 times his size.
And he just doesn't worry about it, and he just shrugs them off and blows them away.
Yeah.
So Just a quick thing that I found on this on the Resident Evil thing. It would have been so the idea of the game would have focused on somebody named Tony who was invincible and had superhuman abilities,
Oh, okay.
and so he was going to be exploring a gothic castle and uncovering his purpose. So very different. Would have been
Yeah.
okay, but I think it would have just been like we said, one of those things where people play it and they're just like, this isn't Resident Evil.
And it's kind of interesting, that whole like Resident Evil and exploring a Gothic castle thing, because they did eventually bring that back in Resident Evil 8, where you start off exploring a Gothic castle. So it's interesting.
It sounds more like House of the Dead than Resident Evil.
Yeah, well, I mean, they make it make sense in Resident Evil 8, with the plot, because you're in
Yeah,
Europe. It takes place in Europe. And I guess they kind of did that in 4 anyway, because there is the castle area in
there
4 as
is.
well.
Yeah, where you
So,
fight Salazar.
yeah. Uh, Again,
But
it makes sense for the lore of Resident Evil 4, because you're in Spain, and it's, obviously like the European, there's castles everywhere in Europe.
yeah, but
Uh
that's all I wanted to say. And they switched it out into what we've got with Devil May Cry, which
yes.
I think it was just better to do that. Honestly,
Yeah.
it reminds me of like an 80s horror action movie that they would have made.
Yeah, definitely. It's got that style. Obviously there's a huge, especially the first one, and elements of the third one, but mostly the first one, there's a huge uh reference to Dante's Divine Comedy. Obviously, because the main character is named Dante and his brother is named Virgil, which is a direct reference to the Divine Comedy, with the main character of Dante Alighieri and Virgil, the Roman poet that leads him through hell. Um, but there's a lot of different references to the Divine Comedy, from Dante's quote unquote love interest Trish being a reference to Beatrice, who is uh the real Dante Alighieri's was love interest in real life, and is also present in the Divine Comedy.
It
um
Trish that names that names the shop Devil May Cry.
I believe so. And then, there's Lady in the third game, who's also known as Mary, so is supposed to be like, the Virgin Mary, basically, who leads Dante through, I believe, heaven, or he meets Dante in heaven in part 3 of Divine Comedy. um so yeah, there's a lot of references to the Divine Comedy, obviously. um but it's very modernized. It takes place in the modern era. Dante uses guns and a sword. So he's got his 2 pistols, Ebony and Ivory, which are you know
go to, go together in perfect harmony. That's awesome.
yeah. And
Wow, that's a really fun like Easter egg. That's wow. I wonder how many people have actually figured that out.
well, I mean, that's the literal name of the pistol. So if you go to the upgrade screen to upgrade them, it's like, oh, do you want to upgrade Ebony and Ivory? Like, so.
No, no, but I mean the Motown reference. How many
Oh,
people have gotten that?
yeah. Oh, well, I'm sure somebody has. There's a lot of different references in Devil May Cry. Like, there's so many influences from,
Unbelievable. Paul
like,
McCartney and Stevie Wonder, everybody. Album Tug of War.
there's so many influences from 80s action movies, like you said, and horror, and different pieces of literature. um Devil May Cry 3 is probably lauded as the best one. I've played 1, 3, and 4. I never played 2. Well, I've played 2, but not like, I never owned 2, because it wasn't that good. A lot of people don't like 2. It was the most poorly received one until the DMC one. Um and
I played the whole trilogy. I like you, 3 was I think was the best one.
yeah, 3 is even in like the fan base, is lauded as the best Devil May Cry, and it really is. Um it's got the best combo system. The weapons are fun to use. You could play as Virgil in the special edition. Um so that was a cool thing, because
Yeah. I remember my problem with 2 was that it was a very quick game, and it felt like not a lot happened. It was too easy.
Yeah. Well, that was the big thing, is that it was way too easy. It was way easier than the first game,
I
and a lot of
remember
people
beating
didn't
it in
like
a
that.
couple of hours and was just waiting for more of a game, and then I saw the credits roll and I said, "What? Wait, that was it?"
Yeah.
3 is easily the best one.
Yeah.
I haven't played 4 or 5 or DMC, whatever that is.
I haven't played 5. I played 4. 4 was really fun. It introduced a new my problem with 4 was this. So, you don't play as Dante at first in Devil May Cry 4. You play as a new character, Nero, who we later find out is actually Virgil's son,
Okay.
and
And
Dante's
he is
nephew.
a reference to the Roman Emperor Nero,
Yes. And
who was
also
not a good guy, by the
also
way.
he's also it's Virgil's alter ego in the first game is Nero Angelo.
Huh.
So, and then you find out that it's actually Virgil. Um,
Okay, that's a little confusing. So
well, because he
so
wears
he's
his like armor, you only see him as like Nero Angelo, and then he like takes his helmet off and it's Virgil.
oh, I see. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
he just names his kid Nero.
yeah. So
Okay.
you play as Nero for like the first half of the game, and you
Wait,
get really
Is Nero Angelo? Because then is Virgil just masquerading as his son for a little bit to try to
Mm,
like
I don't think
maybe
so. I
maybe he's
because
trying to help his kid boost his rep before he can, get out there?
I don't think so because I think it's he's like not you don't really know who he is, and I don't know if his son was born yet necessarily in the first one.
Okay.
Uh,
So I
so
guess his son's name is just like a reference to that.
I guess yeah. He's so uh Nero's got this like like arm that is like demonic, obviously, and it lets you do all these kinds of crazy combos and grabs with it because it's like this giant demon spirit arm that comes out. So you get really used to playing that, and like the sword that he has like a fucking like motor built into it, and like you could build up combo by like continuous hits with it. So it's you get used to using Nero, and then they switch you up and go back to Dante, and it's like really like hard after you become Dante because you're so used to playing as Nero, and Dante plays completely differently. So
Oh,
like all the combos are different and stuff. So that was my one problem with Devil May Cry 4. It was still a good game. I had a lot of fun with it. Um, but it's like a shock when you go from Nero to Dante, you know?
okay, I can
Um,
see that.
yeah. Uh Devil May Cry 5, I
To
believe,
be
added
I
all.
mean, to be fair, at least they changed up the mechanics so it didn't feel like you were just playing a reskin.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So they tried with that. There was just a little bit of a learning curve halfway through the game.
Yeah. Devil May Cry 5 featured Nero, Dante, and a new character named V. I never played 5. I heard it was really good, but I didn't play it. Um, I guess it was actually made using the new RE engine that Capcom had developed for Resident Evil 7 and have basically used it on every Resident Evil game since then, so 7, 8, and then all the remakes.
Okay.
So it's a pretty good engine. I mean I've played Resident Evil 2 remake and it was really good. Um so it's good. I haven't played Devil May Cry 5 though, but like I said, I heard good things about it. Um but it's I feel like Devil May Cry is one of those like classic like PlayStation 2 era games because that's when it first came out. It was the PS2 era.
That's what I was
And
associated with too.
yes, it had that uh and I think it's been on other consoles, but I only ever played it on PS2 and I associated it heavily with the PS2 just because I think for the type of game it is, the PS2 controller feels the best for it. Being able to do the combos and stuff, the way that the buttons are spaced on a PS2 controller. It's weird because I have these like weird feelings about like different controllers. Like I think PlayStation makes control like their controller style is better for say like fighting games and action games like Devil May Cry, platformers, that kind of thing. And I feel the Xbox style controller is better for like first person shooters and RPGs and that kind of thing. So it's just like weird. Like it's like a weird feeling that I always get when I'm playing certain games. Like I'll play Devil May Cry on my computer. I actually recently got the Capcom re-released the original trilogy as like a it's not really remastered, it's more like 1080p and it has some quality of life improvements, but it's not like a full remake like they did with Resident Evil 2 remake. But I'll play it with my I have an Xbox One controller that I use for my PlayStation or for my PC. So, I'm playing it on a whole different controller and it just feels different. It was always better to play it on a PlayStation controller, I feel. And even going and playing some games on emulator like some PlayStation and PlayStation 2 emulators, it's just not the same to play it with an Xbox controller than it was to actually play it with a PlayStation controller. And I don't know, maybe I should just buy a PS5 controller just to have also for my computer and I could switch off. Um,
How do you
but
feel
Devil
about
May
the
Cry,
Switch controllers?
I don't like them. I use the Pro control. So I use the Pro controller, which is basically it's like a copy of the Xbox style controller, the way the buttons are arranged and the sticks. But the problem is that for some reason Nintendo reverses A and B and X and Y.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah,
I wonder if it's a patent thing or if they just wanted or if they
they've
just do
always
it.
done it that way. It's if you look at a Super Nintendo controller, B is like the closest button to your thumb and A is the farther button, and that's just always how it's been with Nintendo. Uh but it's weird because Xbox is the opposite. A is the closest button to your thumb and B is the farther one. And same thing with X and Y, they're reversed.
Hmm.
So it's just I don't know, it's weird. Um because Nintendo's controllers look like BA instead of AB, and you expect AB. And of course, PlayStation goes completely off the fucking rails with X, square, circle, and triangle. But apparently, there's actually symbolism behind there. So, uh, in Japan, the circle is actually supposed to mean yes, and X is no, like cancel.
Huh.
So, if you play a Japanese game with a PlayStation controller, you actually everything that when you like hit accept in the menus and stuff, you're actually using circle instead of X. So it gets a little weird, and a lot of people switch that when when they get the game and they're playing it on their console in America. But the original Japanese, everything is done with circle and X is cancel.
That's funny. I feel like there's probably some Japanese person who gets a game not knowing that it's been modded for North America. So they're
Yeah.
just playing it and they're just going, "No, I said yes. I said yes."
It's also the symbols though actually mean like so the way the PlayStation buttons are arranged and the symbols, X is supposed to be like your feet. So in games that are like action games, like we'll take Devil May Cry, X is jump because X is like your feet, basically. It's like your two legs. And then circle and square are supposed to be what your hands are doing. So one is like your shield and one is your sword, or one is an action button and one's an attack button, something like that, right? And then triangle is supposed to be your head. So triangle tends to be like to go into first person look or to do something like that. It's and that doesn't always hold true for every PlayStation game, but that's I what I understand is supposed to be what the actual symbols mean.
Interesting.
Yeah. And a lot of games do follow that pattern where X is jump and square and circle do something with your hands and triangle does something with your head.
Huh.
Um, like Spyro is another good example where X is jump, square is charge, and circle is fire, and then triangle is to look around.
Yeah.
In like first person view.
I never
So
thought about it.
it does kind of hold true. And at Devil May Cry kind of does something similar too, where X's jump and square and circle do different things. I think square's attack, and I forget, or square's to shoot with your guns, and circle is to attack, or light attack maybe, and then triangle is heavy attack. which, you know, that a situation where obviously we have more than one attack button, you're gonna have to have like use triangle or something else, but whatever, it's irrelevant. But yeah, Devil May Cry 3 is the one I've played most recently. And it really is probably the best. It actually, you know, PlayStation in the early 2000s had it's like the same aesthetic, like almost all these games where you're like running through like this like gothic style castle and fighting demons or monsters. There's so many games in that style on PlayStation 2 in the early 2000s. You could like make like a freaking list a mile long because you had the 3D Castlevanias, Lament of Innocence, and I forget the other one that was on the PlayStation 2. um and then you had obviously Devil May Cry. You could make an argument that Resident Evil 4 fits this category, which did get released on. It was originally a GameCube exclusive, but then eventually they made a PlayStation 2 version, which was like a special edition that had new content. Um, then you also had what else? The Castlevanias. Oh, you could argue that God of War kind of fits that mold, where you're running. Yeah, it's not a medieval or gothic castle, but you're running around a Greek, you know, ruins and Greek cities fighting monsters and demons and shit. Uh, so it was just like this weird aesthetic that, especially PlayStation, stuck to in the early 2000s. Sony's like they had a huge lineup of games that always all had the same similar aesthetic and art style. You could even argue like the Prince of Persia. You know, you had Sands of Time, which was, you know, more Middle Eastern and had more brighter colors and was kind of like, I don't know, a little brighter and more upbeat. And then you had the second game, the Warrior Within, which became like this dark, gritty, like you're getting chased by a monster. The prince looks like evil and you know, beat up and look like he's been through hell. So you know, you kind of see that. And Devil May Cry was fully fit that style. And I think that it must have just been like maybe a trend in the early 2000s in art in general, because you have a lot of movies that also follow this kind of formula at that time. You know, you had Hellboy, you had the Blade movies, which came out in the late 90s, early 2000s. Um, the Matrix, you could say, with the gothic style. It's just it was like a weird style, like this like niche style at that time. I guess
You
the
had
gothic
Spawn, and you had
Spawn. Yep.
every Batman movie that came out.
Yes.
I wonder if Batman's influence on pop culture is what influenced that style in some ways. Also, you had The Crow.
Hmm. The Crow. Yeah. I mean, I think
There
you
was a
know,
lot going on in the Gothic architecture space.
the Craft, uh,
Mhm.
all those like witchy movies, uh, Charmed, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like there was like it was just like the like time of like like gothic horror, I guess. It was the peak of gothic horror. And like everyone was dressed up like mall goths. Ugh. So uh but yeah, Devil May Cry 3 is the one that I played most recently, and it's probably my favorite one. It's probably the hardest of the original trilogy, I would say. Uh, maybe not of the whole series. I don't know. I haven't played 5, so I couldn't say, or DMC, because DMC is just bad, and I don't like to talk about it. Uh, d- and for those who don't know, DMC was like technically the Devil May Cry 5. It was the sequel of Devil May Cry 4, but it was like basically a reboot of the series, and nobody liked it. Everyone thought it was stupid, and they hated the new character, who was supposed to be Dante, but doesn't look anything like Dante. Uh, and it didn't do well at all. It was not very well received.
Interesting.
Um, yeah. Although it got good scores by critics, it was not like well received by fans. And
This may have
I
been
per-
one of those. This may have been one of the things where people started to catch on to IGN,
yeah,
and just a lot of those a lot of those game reviewer sites were just really just like taking the shell money,
yeah,
and they were just ranking these video games much
and
higher than they deserved.
yeah,
So you would see a game that was you would see a game that IGN, for example, just would put down 8 out of 10, right? Wonderful game, very favorable review, all that stuff. And then you would look at the web banner, and the banner was for the game that
yeah,
they just gave an 8 out of 10 or a nine
yeah,
out of 10 or whatever, but it wouldn't get anything lower than maybe a 7.5.
yeah.
And then people would go buy the game, and you'd see the real reviews, and they would just look at it and say, "This game is dog shit. What is good
Yes.
about this? What warranted the 7 or the 8? Why is this good? The controls don't even work. What is this?" And eventually it got out. So now they're a lot more favorable, a lot of these magazines. But in
The-
the early aughts, it was a wild in the early to like mid aughts, I would say, it was a
Yeah.
wild time for video game reviews and
Even
video
though
game journalism in general.
I would even go into the late 2000s, like in early 2010s, because that continued. And it
Yeah,
really became apparent, especially with games like Call of Duty, when they were literally releasing the same game every single year, and IGN would consistently give it high reviews. That's when I really started to catch on. I'm like, this is bullshit. This is
I
literally
think
the same game we just played. There's no difference. They didn't even update the graphics for it, They
I
added
think
two new
that's
guns.
I think that's where a lot of people caught on.
Yeah. Uh, and then there was the whole Gamergate thing where whoever whatever you feel about that, like there was definitely a lot of truth behind that, and it got a little out of hand. I think where like people were like going on these like sexist rants against like female journalists specifically, but like it was like ubiquitous. It didn't matter what like you know gender you were, like male and female journalists were like being paid to give shitty games good reviews, and that was just a fact. Um, so yeah, DMC I think is probably one of those games because of course Capcom's got money. They've got so many successful franchises. Uh, it even got so bad that like when they actually came out with the newest one in 2019, they called it Devil May Cry 5. So they basically skipped over that DMC Devil May Cry was even a thing. Just did
Good,
another Devil May Cry 5.
good.
Yeah.
They at least they listen to the fans and they learn the lesson. Where there's a lot of other corporations and game franchises that would have just said, "No, the fans are wrong. Let's just keep making shitty games,"
Yes.
which we
Um.
see.
Yeah. One of the best aspects I think of the Devil May Cry series is the music. Like especially the theme songs, especially like Devil May Cry 3 is amazing. Um, it's just such a cool song, and it's got that again going back to that early 2000s like techno slash metal kind of aesthetic, and with like these like gothic undertones and like choir singing. It's just such a cool song. And that's always been like Devil May Cry's like style of music.
That
It's almost like
industrial metal kind of thing.
yeah, industrial drum and bass mixed with like metal and techno. It perfectly encompasses that early 2000s gothic aesthetic.
It does, and
Um
I mean, also when you see Dante for if you see when you see Dante for the first time, that's exactly what you're thinking of when you see like that's the music that plays in my head when I see Dante.
exactly.
Maybe he's on a pole sometimes, just dancing away, or a table. But I can't picture Dante behind anything other than industrial metal. Oh,
Yeah.
Silent Hill, another one of those game franchises where it's just a person running around in distress.
Yeah.
Up, not really castle, but you're in hospitals and various parts of hell, I guess,
Yeah.
in the town, or or the hellscape version of the town.
Yeah.
Devil May Cry has also just gotten a lot of crossover recognition, so you've seen it in a bunch of different other games, like
Yes.
Beautiful Joe, which was also a Capcom game, which that would be a fun series to review too. But you can end up playing as Dante in the PS2 port of Beautiful Joe. Beautiful Joe was another game where it was much like Resident Evil 4, it was originally a GameCube game that eventually saw a PlayStation release.
Yep.
And when you get the PlayStation version, you could be Dante as kind of the selling point of just, hey, look at what else you could do when it comes to PS4.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Dante was it seems like he's a forgotten PlayStation mascot in some way, because
He definitely is. Yeah.
I think Kratos overshadowed him for the PS4 and 5,
Yeah. Well,
and
especially
they
because
kind of forgot about Dante a little bit, or they put him in the background, because I think Dante and probably Solid Snake would it would probably be the mascots for the PS2.
I think the problem is that they were both in games that weren't PlayStation exclusives. That's why. Like
Hmm.
DMC3, Devil May Cry 3 was on Xbox, the original Xbox, if I remember correctly. And you know, Metal Gear Solid, they had the Twin Snakes on GameCube. So I think that's probably why they didn't become more plays. Like, even though, when I think of Devil May Cry or Metal Gear Solid, I think of the PlayStation because those are like primarily what they were on.
Right.
I think it's just, you know, that's probably why they got overshadowed because, God of War was absolutely a PlayStation exclusive.
Mm.
But, I think Spyro kind of also takes that a little bit, Ratchet and Clank a little bit. PlayStation has a lot of mascots. They're not as ubiquitous as Nintendo's, let's say, but
Right.
they are there.
Right. I think they have different mascots for different eras.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I like to how to categorize it. Like, I would say for the PS1, your mascots would be Crash Bandicoot, Lara Croft, and Spyro.
Yeah.
For PS2, I think you get a lot more.
Yeah. Kratos is in there, obviously. Ratchet and
Kratos,
Clank, Jack and
Dante,
Daxter.
yeah, and yeah, I guess that would be the 5 then, right? The 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And then when you get to PS4, yeah, then when you get to like PS3 and 4, I think you kind of start to see mostly just Kratos, and
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what other big franchises were coming out with things.
I mean, The
I know
Last of
Ratchet
Us
and
has
Clank was
become,
still doing that. Oh yeah, The Last of Us, but PS3 might have been more Uncharted.
yeah, Uncharted, definitely. I was gonna say Uncharted. That's pretty much it. Like Drake from Uncharted, Kratos, and The Last of Us people. As for like the PS3, 4 era.
Yeah,
Uh
so Dante kind of faded away for a while, but he is also you could also play as Dante, Virgil, and Trish in
mm,
Marvel vs. Capcom 3: Fate of the Two
yes.
Worlds,
Yeah.
which was all right. I wouldn't say that, and you can also play as Dante in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, which like Infinite I never played, but it's not well received. 3 is all right. It does what it needs to do, but nothing beats Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Yeah, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was definitely the best of that franchise, and it's, I think, the one that is most remembered.
Yes, I still
Uh
think that it's the greatest fighting game of all time.
yeah, it's definitely up there. It's probably top 5 fighting games for me. Uh and that's only because I have a bias towards Mortal Kombat because that's what I grew up playing. Although I did play Marvel vs. Capcom when I was a kid too, though. So I don't know. It's that's a hard one for me.
I mean, for me, my favorite fighting franchise is obviously Mortal Kombat, but my favorite fighting game is Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Yeah.
And I would put that in my top 5 of
Yeah.
best video games ever. You could also play as Dante in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royal, which sounds exactly like what it is. It's pretty much Super Smash Brothers but PlayStation exclusive, and only PlayStation characters are allowed to fight in it.
But it wasn't only PlayStation characters though, because they had the Big Daddy from BioShock, and BioShock was a multi-platform game. They
Mm.
also had Isaac Clarke from Dead Space, who was not a PlayStation exclusive. Um,
I
most of
forget.
the people were.
I always forget that. I always forget that Dead Space wasn't a PlayStation. Actually, I always forget that it wasn't an Xbox exclusive.
Yeah.
'Cause, Dead Space very much felt, and I guess BioShock also, both of those games never felt like PlayStation games to me. They always felt like Xbox games.
Well, and again, I think that goes back to my whole like feeling of like, Xbox was always better for shooters, and especially with the controller layout, and PlayStation was always better for platformers, fighting games, and action like hack and slash games because of the controller layout. That's how I always felt about it.
Yeah. They've also turned Devil May Cry into an animated series in anime, which
Yes, several
I
times actually.
yeah, they also tried to turn it into a movie, but it just it seems like nothing really came of it.
Yeah.
In 2011, Screen Gems, who's made the Resident Evil movies, or they've at least put all the money behind it to get them turned into a film series. They bought the film rights to Devil May Cry. They had a screenwriter. They had screenwriters that were going to do this. This fellow Kyle Ward. I don't really know who he was, but he was supposed to write the screenplay, and then nothing happened. So I guess they probably just had a hard time getting it out of development hell, and it just got shelved eventually.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't be surprised if they saw medium success with Resident Evil and Silent Hill, and they just looked at Devil May Cry and they just said, "What the hell is this? We might as well just make The Crow," and they just didn't really know what to do with it, and they shelved it. Um, but I think the animated series and the anime are kind of more the way to go, and
Yeah.
you can see them on Netflix. You can see them all on Netflix
Well, that's the new one you can see. I don't know
of
about
the
the
new
original.
animated series. The
Yeah,
anime, I don't know.
the anime came out in 2007. Yeah.
So you
And I
could
remember
probably find
watching
it on YouTube.
I'm sure it's somewhere. It's probably on it's probably on Crunchyroll actually.
Oh, I could see that.
Uh but I remember watching a couple episodes when it came out because I was like super into Devil May Cry in high school. So, and it was really good. It was actually very reminiscent of Hellsing, which was another, big like gothic style anime
I
at the
do
time.
remember that one.
Yeah, Hellsing was really good. And
You don't really hear a lot about that one anymore.
no, well, it's one of those classic like, the OVA came out. So there's the original Hellsing, and then there's the Hellsing OVA, and people say the OVA is better. Um, but
Okay,
it's I think it's more of a niche anime. A little bit. It's not one of the big popular, super popular ones like Dragon Ball Z or Naruto or something.
sure.
So it's more of an anime for anime fans. It's not like an anime for the whole everybody in the mainstream. Like it's just not as you know as big as some of those more known ones, we'll say.
That
But
makes
it's
sense.
still a really good anime. But
There
yeah,
was al-
that's the Devil May Cry reminds me a lot of that.
mm,
The
there was
original.
also a play that they made.
What?
Yeah,
That I
Capcom
didn't hear about.
produced something called Sengoku Basara versus Devil May Cry, a staged amalgam of the Devil May Cry and Sengoku Basara series in August 2015, where Dante, Lady Trish, and Virgil are they're just going through historical ruins because they're chasing a devil for some reason, and then they're sent back in time into Japan's Warring States period.
Oh, interesting.
Then they meet characters from the Sengoku Basara franchise. They ran for about 18 performances, and I guess that was it. Then they did something else called Devil May Cry, the Live Hacker, which was a musical that only did 13 performances in 2019 in Tokyo. Then there was apparently a DVD released in late August of that year.
Interesting.
So, okay. I have no idea if any. I hope that there's something that exists of these things so that we could just see a small clip of just what it was.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a desire to really see someone revive this, but it would be interesting if somebody could dig up some kind of just
I
some
feel
kind of
like
footage of this stuff.
with the acrobatics involved in, the games, how would you possibly do a stage play with this? You would have to it would probably have to be a huge, like, massive production.
It would probably for it to the closest thing I could think of this is just either a Cirque du Soleil
Yeah,
thing
just say like a
or
Cirque du Soleil fucking, like, acrobatic amount of shit.
some kind of debacle that's like Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark.
Oh, yeah. Which I saw that, I was not impressed. I didn't like it that much. I'm not a huge fan of musicals in general, uh, but I don't know, I thought the Spider-Man one was kinda stupid. I wasn't a fan.
I heard that from a few people, and it just was panned hard in reviews, and it barely did any performances. It just
Yeah.
died on its ass
We went when
immediately.
my brother was in high school because he loved Spider-Man. So, like, it was like a whole family thing where we took him and, uh, I don't know. I just thought it was kinda stupid.
Well, it was.
Yeah.
Ugh.
But, yeah, I
I
think that's all I gotta say about Devil May Cry. I mean, it's a fucking awesome franchise. Anybody who is into the hack and slash genre, especially ones that really, like, push you to do more combos and get a higher combo score, like, this is your game. This is the game for that.
Yeah, I always loved how simple the control scheme was and just how
Yes.
fluid the combat was. It felt
Yeah.
effortless.
It's so easy to, like, juggle your enemies and switch between guns and sword and do all kinds of crazy moves, and it's a lot of these kinds of games, they make the special moves really complicated to do. Devil May Cry does not do that. The moves are super easy to do, and obviously they have a moves list. As you unlock more, you can just go into the menu and say, "Oh, how do I do that again?" And they show you exactly how to do it. So, it's so simple to, like, be good at it, let's say.
Mhm.
It's easy to learn, hard to master, we'll say that.
Yes.
But,
Now I think
great
I'm done.
but, yeah, great fucking game. Anybody who hasn't played it, go get it. It's on Steam. The original trilogy is on Steam, and those are the best ones to start out with.
Yeah.
Uh,
You could also
so
get them on the PlayStation Network too.
yes.
But yeah, just stick with the first 3.
Yeah, 4 is good too. Um, but the first 3 are really the best and the best, example of, that kind of genre, I would say.
Yeah. Alrighty. So I guess we ride off into the sunset now. Thank you everybody for checking this out, and I hope that you learned something and enjoyed yourself. I've been Chris. Oh,
And
this has
I've
been
been
Why
Rob.
Does It? And this has been Why Does This Exist? Question and remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.